You're fast. We have a tight schedule. My name is Jeppe Mikkel Jensen. I'm project coordinator of the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, and I'm quite thrilled to see how many we are here today. I won't take a lot of time because I would initially would like to firstly thank the City of Warsaw, the European Commission's Directorate for Energy, the Association of Municipalities, Polish Network Energie-Cités, and then, of course, all the colleagues from the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, as well as all of you. But I would like to bring to the stage our opening remarks from Mayor Rafał Trzaskowski, who's been sort of front-running in the Covenant of Mayors, is head of the Envy Committee for the Committee of the Regions. From the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, we have seen him many places, and we're very pleased to be here in your city and hear your view on it, on energy poverty from here as an opening remark and sort of kickstarting 2 days of activities, discussions, debates, and hopefully with a lot of solutions. The floor is yours, Mayor.
Yes, hello. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to Warsaw. I'm very pleased to welcome you in our city, which is one of the 100 green cities in Europe. And of course, the times are difficult everywhere. So from the perspective of a mayor of a major European city, I think that the message is pretty clear. We are still realizing our most important priorities, even though, of course, the context is difficult. And it's difficult everywhere, but I would submit to you that it's difficult specifically in this part of Europe. Why? Because we are just getting out of the pandemic that most of us seem to forget, but that's the reality when it comes to the situation in which our economy is finding itself. Of course, there is a war on our eastern border, which has enormous influence on Europe, on inflation, on the prices of basic commodities. The population of my city went up by 15% in just a few weeks. I always give this comparison because you need some context. So when the Mediterranean crisis hit Europe, the migration crisis in 2015, I was a Minister of European Integration, I was dealing with it. The European Union was in panic, didn't know what to do. At a peak, we had 200,000 refugees coming to Europe. We had 300,000 refugees coming to one city. So this is the context, and yet we are very serious about realizing our green agenda, and we are very serious about, of course, fighting energy poverty. And on top of that, guys, there is a lot of European funding, which is absolutely necessary for us to meet those priorities. But this funding for Poland is being blocked because we have a, how to put it mildly, an irresponsible government, which means that on top of all of those challenges, we do have a problem of financing. But yet, we've decided to treat our priorities very seriously because we are absolutely convinced that there is no other way but to tackle the changes that we are seeing, to approach the global warming head on, and that's what we are doing in Warsaw. Now, of course, we put the energy poverty at the center of our climate policy because we want to include everyone, and we do not want to actually make the rifts bigger between different inhabitants of our city, because we built the city for everyone. We have carried out different measures which are aimed at mitigating greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, at the same time, we're trying to reduce the energy poverty. We do have a district heating city building program, which has been in operation from 2009. And what we are doing, we are trying to substitute all of the so-called fossil fuel boilers into something which is much more energy efficient. And by the way, the good news is that, of course, some of it is just connections to central heating, but the good news is that now most of it is zero emission, such as heat pumps. We are, of course, at the same time doing everything in order to speed up that program. And between 2009 and 2022, a total of 7,000 units in more than 400 buildings were successfully connected, which is very important. I'm just going to give you one example. You know, there is a one district on the other side of the river, which is called Praga. And just in 2009, only 2% of all the buildings were connected to central heating. And by the end of 22, 60% of all the buildings were connected, which of course is an enormous progress, and it changes the way in which the whole district functions. And by the way, this is one of the poorest districts in Warsaw, so it also has an incredible impact on energy poverty. I always give this example. I'm going to give it here as well because maybe not all of you have heard it, but in that district we had slightly lower educational scores, and everyone was assuming that it was because it was a poor district of Warsaw. When we started implementing our program, and we were successful at mitigating energy poverty, it turned out that the educational scores went up. So the students were not just coming from poor families. They were deprived of heating in winter, so they were getting cold and they were missing school. Why am I telling you that? I'm just telling you that to prove that actually by following the green agenda, you can also realize other priorities, such as fighting poverty as such, and of course energy poverty in particular. The second thing we are doing is, of course, retrofitting of municipal buildings. That's a huge challenge, and I would submit to you one of the biggest challenges that are before any city in Europe, especially when we actually introduce a renewed directive on the point. Why? Because it's the most costly. And this is the thing, that of course this is one of the least controversial measures, because I think that even the climate deniers do not attack energy efficiency head on, thanks God, but it's incredibly expensive. And of course without EU funds, that makes it a double challenge. There are more than almost 2,000 buildings in the municipal stock, and 77% of them require retrofitting. So it shows you the magnitude of the problem, especially in the post-communist countries, where many of those buildings were built with technologies that are completely obsolete. What we are doing now, also with the help of quite a few experts, we are trying to prepare with lots of pilot programs that are provided to Warsaw to a situation in which we can really undertake an incredibly ambitious program of retrofitting. So all the building codes and you know, we look through different changes in our own procedures in order to prepare for that wave of retrofitting. And we have already started our cooperation with the European Investment Bank within the framework of ENER, European Local Energy Assistance, and we have started retrofitting 50 municipal buildings, but of course that's just the beginning. As I told you, that's just 3% of what we need to do when it comes to municipal buildings only. We do have an anti-smog program in Warsaw, and we treat it quite seriously. We, as I told you, we exchanged the fossil fuel boilers in municipal buildings ourselves, but we also have a special Warsaw subsidy program for individual users in order to allow people to undertake these changes. And more than almost 4,000 solid fuel boilers in the city have been successfully replaced. And on top of that, we have financed more than 5,000 renewable energy installations. Now, guys, this is not easy, because when we started this wave of changes, we were in a completely different context. And of course, with the prices of energy rising and with the irresponsible, I'll stick to that word, even though I would use words which are much tougher, irresponsible government, it's very, very difficult to actually convince people that that's the way forward. Why? Because gas is being subsidized. Why? Because the government was even unable to distribute coal, so they decided to make us responsible for it, which is completely crazy. So some of my people who are actually involved in preparing those renewable subsidies suddenly were tasked by the government with distributing coal. So you can imagine in what kind of situation we found ourselves just at the advent of war. But we are doing it anyhow, and we are trying to convince people that they should continue. And to be honest, anyone who wants it and who is ready to get convinced, because we have special advisors telling people that this is the way forward, they're using these subsidies. But unfortunately, with the rising prices of energy and with a lot of uncertainty, there are many residents of Warsaw, and of course, not only Warsaw, other cities in Poland as well, who are reluctant to actually undertake that huge challenge. As I told you, we have special energy advisors for residents and a lot of consultation points in Warsaw, which facilitates spreading information in the most important and explaining the most important priorities of the city. Now, the most important thing is, of course, creating synergies, and we cannot do it alone because we need experts, and that's why I'm here to address you, because without experts, we couldn't implement some of our programs. We cooperate with the C40. We are a proud member of C40, the only city in this part of Europe. And of course, we have participated in the Inclusive Climate Action Program on Energy Poverty, where we have received technical assistance, first of all, to perform audits and also analyze the energy poverty phenomenon in Warsaw. So the most important thing is, of course, to gather data, because without having the data, you cannot embark upon any reform. With the support of this C40 ICA fund, we have just kicked off the carbon neutral and affordable retrofits for everyone in care, which of course organizes data around energy efficiency, classifies buildings, prioritizes them according to the social and climate criteria, which allows us to plan for the future and allows us to actually establish the priorities and the plan that we want to then pursue. It all comes down to one very important fact, of course, and here I'm very grateful for the European Commission for introducing it. It's, of course, the mission of 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030. Guys, you are used to it now because it exists, but I can tell you that 8 years ago, when I was trying to convince our friends in European institutions that that's the way forward, that we should introduce more direct cooperation with the cities, people were saying that this is not going to happen, okay? Because we collaborate with the member states, it's the member states who call the shots and so on and so forth. I was always advocating for the past 8 years, also through the Committee of the Regions, and that's the official position of the Committee of the Regions, to have a bit of direct financing going to the cities, okay? And this is the last message I want you to bear with me and focus on that. By the way, I was a member of the European Parliament. I was a Minister of European Integration. I spent most of my time, I was a member of the Polish Parliament dealing with the European Union. So I was dealing with, and I worked in the European Parliament. So I was dealing with European policies for the past, 30 years. I started in the Ministry of European Integration where we were negotiating accession. So I know EU institutions pretty well, and I know my friends in different governments. So I was explaining to them, you really want to get the ball rolling, involve the cities to a greater extent. If you really want to have like a palpable action, and if you really want to see the effects, involve the cities, okay? Guys, in this room, we can talk about retrofitting, we can talk about energy poverty, we can talk about all the goals that we need to meet and so on, thresholds, and no one understands that outside of this room. So the thing is that we need to show and demonstrate concrete action. And I was always telling my friends in the European Commission, in the European Parliament, guys, imagine that the European Commission creates a program whereby we retrofit 20 most difficult historical buildings in each city, which is ambitious. Imagine that in 5 years, 20 most difficult historical buildings are being retrofitted and marked as such with huge European flags. Imagine that we remove diesel-powered buses from the streets of European cities, 300, 400 European cities, those who are ambitious, who declare net neutrality. That would be, something, an effect that people can actually see, a win-win situation for everyone, for the European institutions, for the cities, and also for the member states. And by the way, that's the best method for fighting populists. In situations such as we have in Poland or in Hungary, where the money is blocked because of the behavior of the government. And make no mistake, this is not just Poland and Hungary. I mean, the problem of populist governments is an increasing problem everywhere in Europe. Somehow populists do not win cities, guys. So I mean, that's the way forward. So in a certain sense, 100 climate neutral and smart cities is a response to that. Of course, not as ambitious as we would want it to be, but for the first time, this taboo has been broken, and there is a bit of direct financing. We've seen it in Horizon 2020. We've seen it with financing of the NGOs. That's the way forward. And by the way, we're not talking about the bulk of the money. 95% will be distributed by the national envelopes anyhow. But that's the way in which we can change the logic of what we are doing, and we can bring people forward and bring them aboard, because guess what? It is the local politicians, the mayors, the councillors, and so on and so forth, who walk the cities, who walk the streets of the cities, and who are best at creating awareness and explaining to the people that that's what we got to do. And as I told you before, thresholds and everything, we know it. We want to pursue those ideas and those goals, but people need to see concrete action. And that's what we are doing, and that's why it is incredibly important to involve the regions, involve the cities when it comes to meeting our goals on green policy, when it comes to tackling energy poverty, because that's what we do every day. We try to juggle all of those priorities and realize them simultaneously. So that's why if you want to talk about realizing green agenda and energy poverty at the same time, you talk to mayors, you talk to regional politicians, because we do it every day. And of course, if we want to be more ambitious, we need to involve the public in general. We need to create those synergies as we create in here, bring all the experts, bring all the NGOs, bring all the people who care, and create a network which is going to push the agenda even further. And also, of course, influence the national governments. So yet again, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for coming to this conference and to our city. I apologize, but I have to run because we live in very difficult times and pretty busy ones. But my experts are here with you, so they're going to report on everything that happened. And as I always say, guys, enjoy the city, spend as much money as possible, or even more, and come back. Thank you very much.
I just want, here's a disclaimer. We have not sent any keywords or anything to the mayor, but I cannot come up with a better start of what we're doing, because literally he's been listing all the key points and all the things that we're doing within the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub and all the things we're pushing forward to sort of achieve. So I'm a bit starstruck here, but and with that, I'll introduce our next opening remark here with Tyge O'Brien from DG Energy. Thank you very much for coming, in charge of consumers, local initiatives, and the just transition, to sort of link this, which is also one of the key aspects of the advisory hub here, to sort of be the connection between the cities and up to the EU level. So please, the floor is yours.
Jeppe? Yeah, we're good. Thank you, Jeppe. Okay. Thank you, Jeppe. So, you feel a little starstruck For that very impressive opening set of remarks. I, unfortunately, for my part, have to follow it, which is going to be not so easy. I want to thank, in particular, to start off, Warsaw and the Mayor for hosting this event today here. I want to thank him in particular for coming and giving these opening remarks that he gave. I think we appreciate that commitment and taking the time out, and what he alluded to is a difficult, challenging set of circumstances where politicians have to do, let's say, their primary job of getting elected and getting their colleagues elected. But also to take it out, give such a clear and precise, and there is a political sense of what it is that we are facing, and the technical and political challenges that we're facing now. Before I come on to saying the second set of thanks to the Advisory Hub and everything for the organisation, I just want to highlight a few points. I'm sure you're all aware of them, but sometimes it's worth just recapping because we're going to hear them quite a bit over the next while. We've recently had some data come out for the situation in 2022, and essentially about 10%, a bit under 10% of the EU's population is reporting that they are unable to keep their homes adequately warm. Sorry, I can try to...
Yeah, you come a bit closer.
I can just take it. That'll probably work better. So, according to the most recent data, about 10% of the EU's population is unable to keep their home over the last couple of years. Now, I think we can all go through the reasons for this, whether it is the increase in prices of last year, whether it is the wider squeeze on incomes, or whatever combination of issues it is. But I think it's clear that this is not something that just sits in a vacuum that can be ignored and not addressed. But at the same time, and this comes to something as well that Mayor Trzaskowski mentioned, is that what's measured matters. And that's why I'm also extremely happy that we are having this conference today at a time when we now have a European definition for energy poverty, which will help concentrate minds, whether that's through national energy and climate plans or whether it's through elsewhere, concentrate minds in policymakers' minds in identifying and addressing this problem. It also reflects the fact that this commission, by which I mean this college, has put the idea of having and delivering a just transition as being a key part of the idea of having a European Green Deal. We could talk on one side about how it relates to regions and coal regions or other types of regions, but we can also talk about how it affects individual citizens and the work that we've done here on energy poverty through the different parts of our programme related to the Fit for 55 in really mainstreaming energy poverty as a concept that has to be understood and addressed with a European perspective as well as with a national perspective and as well as with a local perspective. So, as we're looking at that, we're talking about the price hikes that we saw over the last number of years and you know, maybe I think a lot of you will know the experience of following the news and seeing, you know, talk about wholesale prices going up so high and it being a sense of crisis around the issue. And I suspect that some of you also thought, well, hang on, there's been a crisis with affordability going on for some time now for many people in terms of energy poverty. And so when I say that the Commission also raised the issue and the Member States took it forward at through the legislative programme over the last number of years, I think the other point you see is that the need to be able to deliver concrete changes on the ground has never been greater and has never been more taken seriously. So that will relate over the coming weeks, months, years, through to the practical implementation of measures related to energy efficiency, related to delivering change on the ground for citizens, and for advice and help to member states in how they address energy poverty. Now here, I just wanted to flag one important point, is that we have a State of the Energy Union report coming out that is due for adoption in October. We intend at the same time to adopt an updated recommendation on energy poverty in the Commission with that. And that updated recommendation will build on the existing one, but go substantially further and set out even more clear guidance for member states on how that can be, how energy poverty can be addressed in their national energy and climate plans. It will be accompanied by, or we intend to be accompanied by, a staff working document that will provide very detailed advice that we hope will be of use, has been inspired by the work that has been carried out by the Energy Poverty Hub and by all of you over the last number of years. Which brings me to the last part of what I want to say, which is to recognise the work of the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, to recognise at the same time the contribution of the European Parliament in helping ensure that this was set up. And I want to actually, I think I can recall a particular politician because she's not running for election again. The contributions of Teresa Griffin, for example, and others, I just put it down, because she was involved in mainstreaming the idea of energy poverty during the Clean Energy Package through the European Parliament. And so now turning to what the work of the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub is. I mean, this is the annual conference, and I think a very useful event, but it wouldn't be, and it's great that we're all able to come here and see the benefits of the work that's been done over the last year. But I think I'll put it that way. This is the point, to see the benefits of the work, to consolidate and to publicize, for want of a better way. But that day-to-day work that you do as the practical arm of delivery for the Covenant of Mayors really helps individual municipalities to deliver action, to deliver change for people who are facing energy poverty on the ground. I think it's about 75. I was trying to do the numbers because there was more than one call, and it's basic maths, but I'm sure I got it wrong. I think it's about 75, maybe just under 75 individual municipalities are benefiting from direct support. But that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the ability of all signatories of the Covenant of Mayors, indeed actually cities more generally, to benefit from the advice that is being developed in terms of the handbook, in terms of the additional support. And this, to link back to the last step, if we say that if we want to see member states being able to deliver on better national energy and climate plans with a better mainstreaming of energy poverty, this ability to act on the ground, as the Mayor was saying just before this, will be critical to actually addressing the problems of what now seems to be, with the latest degrees, a growing problem again, maybe unsurprisingly with the energy crisis, but a growing problem. So with that, and maybe going into the technocratic part, I think the next 2 days are going to be an extremely useful opportunity for us all to really just get to grips with what it is that we can do and what needs to be done. Thank you very much, Eva. Thank you very much all.
Thank you very much, Tyke. These two speeches here really, as I mentioned, are really sort of tying the connection there is between sort of the local level and the EU institutional level, and basically everything there is in between. Something that we're going to touch upon a lot these coming days. I just want to quickly make a very short description of you. Because we were quite overwhelmed. We The conference here is approximately twice the size of what we expected. There was about a bit more than 235 registrations, and I think that we are actually quite close to this. It's always a bit ambivalent when people are seeking our help, because this is a dire situation. On the other hand, I think we should turn this around and see that it's crucial, and it's really good to see that there are so many people in the crowd here and also well beyond this room that are interested in taking actions and tackling energy policy. For you to know, out of these 235 plus, I have counted 75 representatives from municipalities, from public authorities. I've counted 65 participants that comes from the NGO and not-for-profit sector, 30 that comes from academia and university, 15 from private companies, 15 from energy agencies, and 5 people from EU institutions. So that can be an icebreaker when you ask the person next to you where you're from, because you will have to learn from each other. The topic of energy poverty at local level is still embryonic in the sense that we have so much to learn from each other. So I really invite you to not only listen to what comes up here, but also listen to the people next to you. Also because they're not two things. They're not two cities that are alike, and they're not two approaches that are the same. Which means that basically anybody you will be talking to in here can have another perspective on what you're doing, and therefore inspire. I would love to do sort of a long list of references to what the mayor and the commission have been saying here, but my task here is very practical. So I'd just like to provide a couple of practical details that will make our 2 days even better. First of all, you're here in the room, but apart from that, there's also people online. And if you have colleagues back home that were unhappy that you were the one who got the seat here today in the room, you can share the link. This is streamed via the European Commission Directorate-General for Energy's YouTube channel, so you can find that. Then it's really important for us to know that you're here. So if there's somebody here not sitting with a badge, please go and register. That's important also because when you get that badge, if you turn it around, you will never feel lost, because this will tell you what roundtables you're on, and the discussion, so you're basically guided through the right discussions. Apart from that, we will basically be in this building the whole 2 days until we will be finalizing with our walking tour. I guess we could have a walking tour in this house, but this we will have outside. We will have our dinner and our lunch basically down the hall here and to the left. So that's where we will be. At the same time, there is I should also do some commercials for hashtag EPAH_conf23. So if you are posting something, maybe to the colleagues that didn't make it here today, use that hashtag. I think you will also find this on posters. Apart from that, we have a lot of materials here in the back that will provide hopefully a lot of inspiration. And after you have read these posters, it's very, very likely that you will also be able to find the very people who's behind these activities in this very room. So if there is a poster, if you read the poster from La Palma, you can talk to Nuria and the colleagues for much more information. So consider the poster as teasers for finding the people that can explore, that can explain much more to you. Apart from that, we have some of the guidance fact sheets. We are producing a series of materials also, as Taig was also mentioning. We have the posters. You will see are from the technical assistance 1 and 2, but you will be able to see you also see, I think we have 4 posters where we actually have the results already, so go look for them, where the technical assistant has sort of been round up. Apart from this, we hope that you will have 2 days with some super food for thoughts, and we're here in case of questions, the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, and you are here in case of questions, so please mingle and make the absolute most of this. Before we start the mingling mayhem, I would like to invite our colleagues from the Joint Research Center, Yorgos Koukoufikis, to stage. We are collaborating obviously with the Joint Research Center a lot, and Yorgos has been instrumental to some of the, let's say, some of the more heavy foundation on energy poverty. So we'll hear a bit more about this and more inspiring remarks. So feel free, Joe.
Thank you. So we heard about the numbers. So when I will try to address it, would be easier. Instead of saying dear guests, I can say dear fellow researchers, 30 of you, dear policymakers, around 50. Everyone who took the time basically to be here with us, either a researcher in academia and an NGO working in this very important issue. I'm Yorgos Koukoufikis. I come from the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, and I worked the last years on the agenda of the just energy transition. I'm extremely privileged to be here today and given the opportunity to address this conference. So I would like to thank the organizing team for the invitation and mainly for the work they've done the last years on bringing this community of energy poverty practitioners together. So a warm welcome from my side for a conference of particular importance because it brings together the community that believes that energy access is not just a privilege, but it's a fundamental right. I was asked to speak to you today on the topic of the global perspective of effective policy recommendations for inclusive energy transition. It's a rather complicated title, and I hope you enjoy it because it will last 30 minutes according to the agenda, but I will try to keep it short. So, I want to decompose this title. Yeah.
It's important what you say.
Yeah, I know. Okay. So I would like to decompose a bit the title of the topic I was given, and I will start with a global perspective. The energy transition is here. The energy transition is happening, and it's happening faster than we may have thought so. It was back in 2014 when the European Council agreed on the 2030 climate and energy policy framework. And back then, it was set an ambitious target of by 2030 to be able to satisfy our final gross energy consumption with 27% of this energy coming from renewable sources. This target, however, will be met in the course of the next 2 years. So Europe is deploying fast renewable energy and is not alone to do that. Other parts of the world, other developed economies do the same. The US started to increasingly heavily investing in renewables, and also China, the so-called factory of the world, is on the course as well to hit its wind and energy and solar energy targets of 2030 by 2025. Which means that the transition happens fast. And a few days ago, the Parliament actually approved the new target for 2030, which was raised to 42.5% of the final energy consumption. And this is something of an indication that goes beyond of political commitments to the energy transition, or is beyond, let's say, the necessity driven by the geopolitical challenges. It is also an understanding of how fast, how much the transition has been accelerating, so we need to set new targets. I would just use one technology as an example to indicate this speed. The photovoltaic technology. Between 2012 and 2022, the global installed capacity of photovoltaics increased tenfold. At the same time, the levelized cost of energy, which is the life cycle cost it takes to produce 1 kilowatt hour of energy, fall for photovoltaics from 47 cents US dollars to 7. According to the International Energy Agency and their projections, the solar photovoltaics will, the capacity of installed solar photovoltaics will surpass hydropower in 23-24. It will surpass natural gas in 24-25, and eventually will become the largest in the world by 2027, when it will surpass coal. So this is indeed a very fast transition that we're experiencing. Last year was a record year for the EU in terms of solar deployment. The PV installation rate increased by 50% across the bloc. And in fact, the EU PV market is set to more than double in the next 4 years, reaching in 2026, 2027, half terawatt of installed capacity. Of course, all this new installed capacity, it needs first to be, let's say, constructed and produced. So we need to pay a lot of attention in our industrial capacity. And indeed, the global manufacturing capacity grew last year by 70%. That's a huge number, and big part of this additional industrial capacity comes from China, which controls also big part of the raw materials and the supply chain. That is why, for example, in the EU, in order to reinforce its industrial capacity, the Green Deal Industrial Plan and the Net Zero Industry Act aim to bring back in Europe part of this industrial capacity, with a goal to produce by 2030 40% of the PV systems that we need for our goals. It goes without saying that this very fast deployment is not coming without any issues or problems. For example, we have facing great challenges with grid congestion, with grid stability and integration of all this installed capacity. And of course, this requires additional investments on the grid and modifications, while at the same time, another very pressing issue is the shortage of skills, the shortage of labor, which increases the installation times, increases the project's costs, and the maintenance of these systems. Now, for that last one, we will hear later today at the conference, because there are 2 sessions dedicated to the issue of skills and how they are connected to the issue of energy transition and can help eradicate energy poverty in parts of Europe. And by mentioning energy poverty, I want to move to the second part of the title of the presentation, which is the inclusive energy transition. We are all aware that access to safe, clean, and renewable energy is necessary to achieve socioeconomic development. The World Bank estimates that around 800 million people across the world do not have access to energy at all. And much of this world's poor are mainly in areas of sub-Saharan Africa and parts of Asia, where basically families are forced to survive with literally no access to energy. This is, of course, an energy poverty at its most extreme form. It's a predicament that forces households to allocate large part of their efforts, of their incomes, to satisfy their energy needs. And often they use primitive or harmful forms of energy that are also environmentally destructive, but also dangerous for their own health, and perpetuate the cycle of poverty. Because as we heard before from the mayor, the example of the Praha district, how, for example, the school performance of kids had been increased when energy poverty started to be eradicated in that district. So providing these regions with energy, with clean energy, reliable energy services is something that goes beyond the moral obligation of the world, but it's also an immense development opportunity for them. Now, in order to successfully combat energy poverty, we must look beyond infrastructure supply. We need to facilitate comprehensive energy transitions that use energy systems not just via their technical capacity, but try to make the transition just. And basically, this is the type of energy poverty issue we face in Europe. In Europe, energy poverty is less of an infrastructure issue. In Europe, basically, we need to make another transition when it comes to energy poverty, and we need to transition from providing emergency coping mechanisms in order to tackle the phenomenon, to the use of sustainable policies that reduce energy poverty once and for all. So basically, we know that emergency coping mechanisms are vital. We know that they help European vulnerable households to have access to energy. We know that there are more than 50 million Europeans that experience energy poverty. Indeed, the last year especially, it was exactly this direct income support schemes and the emergency coping mechanisms that the governments deployed that helped many, many households across Europe to cope with the high energy prices. However, these measures, even if necessary, are often short-term and unsustainable. They do not address the root causes of the phenomenon, and we have, as a result, households to go year after year and experience the same problem and situation, while governments have to fund year after year their energy support schemes. So in order to address the root causes, we need first to understand, and we are lucky because at the moment we had reached to the era where we do know exactly what energy poverty is, more or less in Europe. We know that low-income households are affected the most. We know that households with very poor energy-efficient homes are affected the most. We know that areas that are remote, like islands or mountains, face fuel poverty as they don't have access to affordable energy. This knowledge means that we can have the ability to design measures with a multifaceted approach and our measures to ensure that we use a holistic way of thinking when we address the phenomenon. And that's why, for example, the Social Climate Fund and the way of operationalization of it can have a significant potential for energy poverty eradication in Europe. The Social Climate Fund will not only provide financial direct income support to vulnerable households, but it will also fund investments and measures that help to reduce emissions in road transport and buildings. That means that we can provide exactly this enabling framework for long-term energy poverty reduction. And for those of you that are here tomorrow, there are exactly sessions on that. There are sessions discussing energy equity. There are sessions discussing renovation financing and target setting for vulnerable households. And there's a session exactly on the Social Climate Fund and what that means for energy justice. Now we talked about emergency coping mechanisms, about holistic approaches to energy poverty reduction, and there is one more thing I consider very important, which is the exploration of empowerment of vulnerable households. And empowerment means not just access to energy, but also ownership of renewable energy. And a lot can be said on that. There are a lot of ways or avenues to empowerment, but one of my personal favorites is actually the use of energy communities. And you can join us tomorrow in our workshop that will discuss the role of energy communities on tackling structural obstacles on energy poverty and benefiting vulnerable households. And I will use the energy communities to transition to the last part of the title of the speech, which has to do with effective policy recommendation in policy making. Myself, I'm a member in two energy communities, one in my neighborhood in one in my neighborhood in Amsterdam, where I live, and one in Greece, where I come from. which allow me to cover my electricity needs via collective energy projects and be able to become a self-producer myself. I do understand that I'm in a very privileged position because first, I'm energy literate. I understand why it's important to be part of this transition. I understand how to be part of this transition. I do have the knowledge and the means to do that. And B, because of course I have the financial resources to invest in an energy community project. However, even if these two very important aspects come together, I can assure you that I wouldn't be able to be part in these two communities. I wouldn't be able to be part of this transition if there were not two factors. The one is active community leaders that create partnerships, that organize themselves, that devote time, energy, and their intellectual capacity to bring these energy communities together. These are the people that are basically the motors behind every energy community project. And the second is the enabling frameworks, enabling legal frameworks. Without the legal framework that sets what an energy community is, without the legal framework that allows virtual net metering, I wouldn't be able to be an energy community member. So the question here is, where these enabling frameworks come from? What type of regulation, what type of policies? And how, basically, we can create frameworks that can facilitate the participation of all in the energy transition, not just the privileged ones. I don't have the answer on that, but I do know, we do see that indeed improved policies can narrow the gap between countries, between regions, between social groups. And we do know that we have different socioeconomic systems in place, different realities in place. So the first thing we have to do when we design policies or legal frameworks is to contextualize, to go step by step from the global to the local with a good old think global, act local way of doing things. The global perspective provides the answers in relation to the speed of the transition, as we discussed before, in relation to the climate targets that we set globally, in relation to the productive and trade capacities of technologies. The national and the EU level, in our case, provides answers, for example, for regulation or financing issues of the transition, while the local context identifies specific needs, resources, opportunities and barriers. And this creates our knowledge position. This creates a knowledge position that can help us become architects that design and implement energy policies that address the unique socioeconomic dynamics of its community and performs a comprehensive needs assessment and goal setting. And this needs assessment is very, very important in the context of energy poverty, as we do need to identify the areas and the households that suffer from energy poverty in order to develop the adequate policies, programs, and actions to tackle it. And once again, you are very lucky in this conference because there are experts that will discuss these things both today and tomorrow. Immediately after, there's a session that will try to operationalize this holistic, multi-level approach on energy poverty, while there will be other sessions with a focus on energy poverty indicators and vulnerable groups identification, providing insights from several EU countries as well as local contexts. Now, we discussed needs identification, goal setting, and we have to go to the actions. And for the actions, in order to indeed provide an inclusive policy-making framework for the energy transition, we have to discuss the role of partnerships and the role of community involvement. As I mentioned before, in my personal example on my energy citizenship story, partnerships and community organization is very important. Our policies should be able to address key stakeholders, to enable them, to bring together from the private sector to academia, from municipalities to individual citizenships, and create partnerships. And this will create the necessary intellectual, monetary, and relational capital needed for an energy access that is open to everyone, basically. Tomorrow there is a session on citizens' empowerment. It will discuss the one-stop shop solution and the formation of effective partnerships to tackle energy poverty. So this would be linked to that. And at this point, I couldn't but emphasize the role of local governments and cities. Cities as regulators, as policymakers, are uniquely empowered to drive energy transition, and in particular just energy transition. We do see that cities outpace often national governments in terms of target setting, in terms of ambitious climate plans, in terms of the speed of adoption of sustainable energy solutions. We've seen cities both via the 100 Climate Neutral Cities initiative, but also beyond that, to indeed be active in multiple fronts. They bring together citizens, they support community energy projects, they promote sustainable transportation, and we see that they are key partners on the just energy transition. And that's why throughout the conference, basically, the role of cities and the role of local policy and action is present in pretty much any session. Now, the energy transition on its own represents perhaps the biggest policy challenge of our generation. A successful energy transition depends largely on the preparedness we have to address the context and engage with complexities of social, technical, and economic nature. And making this energy transition just is even bigger of a task. So we are gathered here not to just discuss problems, we are gathered here to discuss potential solutions, to share experiences, case studies, success stories from around the world and Europe towards implementing inclusive energy projects. Our objective isn't just to understand energy poverty, it's also to draw upon this collective knowledge and experiences. And the next 2 days, we have to think beyond conventional wisdom, take from each other the knowledge and experiences, question our assumptions, and step out of our comfort zones to deliver this new knowledge. The solution to a just energy transition goes beyond the realm of investment and infrastructure, and it relies in our ability to collectively reimagine energy access and engage all stakeholders in a meaningful way, putting in the center of our efforts the underprivileged. Thank you very much, and have a great conference.
Thank you very much, Yorgos. I will now start my butchering of names, because the next session will be a panel, an international panel, so with plenty of difficult names for somebody like me. But the next session here will be a panel discussion moderated by Mathilde Leege from the European Commission. And I'd like to see Josko Klisovic, Dorota Sadowska-Stepniak, and Dragos Leszek, and then myself, which is perhaps the easiest one to pronounce. So just give us a second for the participants to come up here, and we'll reorganize a little bit.
My laptop should have the slides. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, well? Okay. So, I have the privilege, I'm very happy and very grateful to be there to moderate this panel on multi-level approach on energy poverty, from shaping the legal framework to planning energy poverty actions. I'm going to introduce an overview of the EU legal framework. Then we'll have some discussion with my co-panelists. And the aim of this session is to try to operationalize the multi-level approach, as Georgios just said. And we'll try to better understand what is in place, what is evolving. Yeah, okay. Thank you for the tips, if it's better now. And then we'll have a discussion with actors, and they will tell us how they perceive it, this framework, how they implement it on the ground, and how all these multi-level, multi-actors dimensions interact to tackle energy poverty. Tackling energy poverty is a now well-established responsibility for member states and report on progress also. Energy poverty is included as an issue that can be addressed structurally through energy policy, complementary and in addition to social policy. On my first slide, I quote the third package who introduced this energy poverty concept as early as 2009. And it's quite important to recall that because for the gas directive, for example, she's still running on. This third package in 2009 already called on member states to develop national action plans and other appropriate frameworks to tackle energy poverty. It also asked member states to define vulnerable customers and protect them through social security system, prohibition of disconnection in critical times. And this approach has been really reinforced in the fourth package, the Clean Energy for All Europeans, which includes several legislative acts with energy poverty clauses. The main one, the Electricity Directive 2019-944, requires member states to take appropriate measures to address energy poverty. It also allows for regulated prices for energy poor or vulnerable households customers as a derogation to the general principle of market-based pricing. I'll just have a quick. It also put an obligation, this directive, on suppliers to provide adequate information on alternative measures to disconnections. This electricity directive is really key, and it also sets an obligation to assess the number of households in energy poverty in its Article 29, which is a cross-reference with the governance regulation. So, on the next slide, yes, thank you. The governance regulation from 2018, member states have the responsibility to diagnose the number of energy poor in their territory, identify whether the number is significant, and if it's significant, they need to identify the policies and measures to address energy poverty in their national energy and climate plans. Member states need also to report on the progress that they have made on these policies and measures every 2 years. And for example, at the moment we are assessing the biennial progress reports in 2023, and member states will publish their updated national energy climate plans next year in 2024. In 2020, Tag mentioned it, the Commission published an energy poverty recommendation to guide member states on how to assess energy poverty and define what is significant. The two main texts are the text of the Renewable Energy Directive, of the Clean Energy Package, are the Renewable Energy Directive and the Energy Efficiency Directive. The first one is not mentioning specifically energy poverty, but it gives support measures and information on access to renewable energy as well as renewable energy communities that are part of the solution to tackle the root cause of energy poverty. And it also includes low-income and vulnerable consumers. Also, the Energy Efficiency Directive sets obligations towards the energy poor and vulnerable households. And this leads to my next slide, because this Energy Efficiency Directive has been recast. In December 2019, the European Commission launched the European Green Deal, while planned to transform the European economy into a modern, resource-efficient and competitive economy, with three main objectives: net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, economic growth decoupled from resources use, and no person, no place left behind. As Tag mentioned earlier, it's a real political choice of this Commission to ensure a fair and just transition and reduce systemic inequalities. In July 2021, so the Commission proposed the Fit for 55 package, and the first main text that has been now approved and published is the recast Energy Efficiency Directive. Member states have 2 years now to transpose it. One of the main delivery EED recast in the frame of the EU Green Deal is go further on energy efficiency objective, of course, but it also set the priority for the most vulnerable. And for the first time, we have an EU-wide definition of energy poverty. It also give energy efficiency, give the priority to people affected by energy poverty for energy efficiency policy measures. And member states also have to ensure that national policy mix has no adverse effects on vulnerable customers and final users, people affected by energy poverty. Another text that is now approved but not implemented yet is the Social Climate Fund. This is an EU instrument to mitigate impacts of the EU ETS 2 that has been also been adopted and that will be enforced in 2027. There is what is important here in the Social Climate Fund is that there is a cross-reference to the EED definition, and we are trying now to base all our text on the EED definition of energy poverty to really put coherence and coherence to all the framework. The Social Climate Fund will run from 2026 to 2032 and will be 65 billion euros. I'm now down with the new legislation and regulation that have been adopted, and I wanted to highlight 3 texts that we are still working on. The recast of energy poverty, of energy performance of buildings, EPBD, which is now under a legislative process. There is also the cross-reference to the definition of energy poverty. Member states have to prioritize worst-performing buildings. Energy-poor and vulnerable households are a priority target population for the measures that mitigate possible social effects and maximize their social benefits. National building renovation plans include monitoring the reduction of people affected by energy poverty and people living in inadequate housing or with inadequate thermal comfort conditions. The two last texts that are ongoing is the gas package, which is now in the trilogues, meaning discussion between the Council, the Parliament, and the Commission to end with a final compromise. This gas package will extend protection of vulnerable customers to gas markets, and it's trying to mirror what exists in the Electricity Directive, which is not that simple because we have in parallel, of course, the proposal for electricity market design, which is also reforming the Electricity Directive, with the objective to make consumer bills less dependent on volatile short-term prices driven by high prices on fossil fuels. This last text is also enhancing consumer protection, and member states will have to ensure that vulnerable customers are protected from electricity disconnections. Member states will have also to appoint a regime of supplier of last resort and obligations on suppliers to offer fixed-term price contracts. Facilitation of energy sharing are also well present in this initial proposition that is still ongoing. Well, this is a quick overview of this EU legal framework. I hope this is clear. It's really evolved a lot during the last years, and it gets more and more complex. But as it's targeting a multi-dimension phenomenon, we need to cover all dimensions. And it's really good to see that we tackle energy from all the perspective, the energy poverty from all perspectives. And it needs really to be central in many related policies. We are also improving reporting obligations, and we're trying to put in coherence all the plans that are going to be needed from this different text, with also all this cross-reference and common approach to reporting. Well, I hope this was useful for you, and I will open the discussion with my colleagues. Maybe Mr. Josko Klisovic, who is president of the Assembly of City of Zagreb, member of the Committee of the Regions. Well, Mr. Klisovic, I have a question for you. Hearing the legal framework, what do you think the main challenge? What are the main challenges in designing EU frameworks, and how do you see them from your national and local government perspective?
Right. Thank you very much for the question. I first would like to thank organizers to organize such an important event here on the very hot topic. And that's energy poverty. We are living in 21st century. But I see that you are not very well energized today, this morning. You are quite quiet. Maybe we need a bit of morning gymnastics. So can I just ask you a couple of questions and ask you to politely to raise your hand? So if I ask you whether you have small kitchen or home appliances in your house which are not energy efficient, how many of you will raise their hand? All right. There is some 30% of people, like, microwave device, like a coffee machine, like a television, refrigerator, these kind of things. And how many of you live in houses which are not energy efficient, including apartments? Me too. And how many of you really pay your energy bills on time? Okay, minority of you. So I can tell you, all of us, we are candidates for energy poverty. But hopefully, we are really not, since our salaries, remunerations are high enough that we can plan our lives within efficient energy. But not all of the people who live around us can do that, because their salaries are quite low. And that's not even enough. But the shortage of supply of energy or bad state policies in building infrastructure and access to energy can really hamper their life, and people really feel socially excluded. So when we come to the original question, what are the main challenges in the European Union with regard to energy poverty? I can tell you in legal terms, what we need is proper legislation, we need adequate financing, and we need capacity. We need knowledge, and we need skillful people in our local administrations, regional administrations, national administrations. In EU administrations, we do have them, but we need people who are going to implement all the policies we agreed at the EU or national level. So what we lack at the moment is what I call, in my opinion, I'm writing opinion on a multi-level governance of energy union and climate action, Green Deal in short. And one of my conclusions is that what we lack is proper horizontal and vertical integration. When I say horizontal integration, I mean that we are living in silos, which we need to break. That all the policies we agree upon, energy policy, health policy, gender policy, economic policy, should be integrated and coherent, leading to one goal, one common goal, but not different policies which really conflict in the space, conflict in theater, as we called it, conflict in our own lives. And when I say we need vertical integration, then I mean that we need to integrate all levels of authority, from European level, national level, and local level. Who is excluded in the moment? Usually local level. They are the least important. Are they really the least important? I'm coming from local level. I used to be the deputy foreign minister representing my country at the national level. I can tell you how I neglected local level in shaping my decisions, and I was wrong. Now I'm president of the City Assembly of Zagreb, capital of Croatia, and I can see how important a local level is. For what? For implementing policies. Implementing policies. The key word is implementation. If we do not implement what we agree upon in Brussels or in Zagreb, then these are just words and worthless paper. Then we had a waste of energy for nothing. But if we include local authorities who are implementing agencies or almost all policies, 75% of acquis communautaire of European Union is implemented at the local level by local authorities. So they should be somehow consulted before the policy is shaped, before the goals are set, before the measures are decided upon. Why? Because they need to see whether they can implement it. And they can even provide the input for policymakers at the European and national level. What's needed really to implement properly the policies and achieve goals we want to achieve. So that's why I'm fighting all the time that local authorities be recognized as real partners, not just as a regular stakeholders, but real partners of Europe and national governments. They can really provide very, very important input to decision making, and then they will implement it on the ground. You know, and there is that psychological element. When you are part of the process, you feel that you are owner of the process, and then you are ready to implement that, because that's your decision. But when people from Brussels come to us in Zagreb of people from my government come to us to Zagreb and say, you should implement that, and for that I don't give you money and people to do it, then we say, fine, it's really nice. Let's go for a dinner, have a glass of wine, and tomorrow we'll continue to speak. Don't set me unrealistic goals. Don't provide me unrealistic measures, because I can't really do it. I can do it if we sit together and speak. And I tell you what I need to implement, and in particular, what I need is capacity. I need skillful personnel. I do not have it, so please help me educate these people. I need adequate financial resources to educate people, to invest in renovation of building, to invest in subsidizing citizens to buy new appliances which are energy efficient, to implement all the measures you are asking for me to do it. And in Zagreb, as a capital of Croatia, we we didn't wait for others, we didn't wait for the government, but we prepared our own plan how to fight and suppress energy poverty. It's some 10 measures plan. We secured the financing from our city budget, but we are counting, of course, on the EU funds, because there are some reasonable people in the European Union who have the same goals as we do have. And since we have the same goals, we'll try to translate some of our measures to concrete projects and ask for the EU financing of it. The obstacle we have is that the city of Zagreb is run by one political party, which is in opposition at the national level. So the government has, the other favorites in other cities, and that's why we have the same problem with as a Warsaw mayor. When he wants to apply for the EU money, he needs to go through the national government, and the national government does not value all the time projects in accordance with their real values, but in accordance with political considerations. So we somehow are left out from the government priority cities which should be sent to Brussels for financing. This is just our internal problem, but I see that other countries have it the same. So this is horizontal and vertical integration we are missing in the European Union to be more efficient. The rest, as I said, is access to energy. People do not have the same access. It can be a question of supply. We have a war in Ukraine, the Russian gas is cut, or it could be a problem of infrastructure in your own country. You have enough gas, electricity, whatever, but in rural areas, sometimes you don't have enough infrastructure to bring that energy to the people. And that's the problem for them. But if you manage to bring that to the people, then there is another problem, and that is affordability. Do people have enough money to pay for it? If they don't, we have a huge problem. In Zagreb, in my city, we have the whole line of subsidies for the citizens which are not really able to pay for the energy. Some 5 million euros annually, and we are a city less than 1 million people, we provide people with such a money, to pay their bills. We have in Zagreb, analysis show 5% of people who live in energy poverty. At the level of government, that number is 12. Zagreb is the most developed part of the country as a capital, with full of industry, economy running, booming, everything. We have 5% of them, still 5%. Some 50,000 people are below energy level, so we subsidize them. And then the third problem which we have is renovation, energy efficient buildings. This is something very, very capital intensive, very costly. For that, we do not have enough money in our own city. Unfortunately, we were victim to earthquake, devastating earthquake 2 years ago. But that earthquake became our opportunity, because there is kind of solidarity in European Union with the victims of any kind of natural catastrophe, and we suffered one. So now we are preparing projects to rebuild, damaged houses, damaged buildings, but with a view to make them energy efficient. And for that, we will use really EU money. There is plenty of money for those who know how to use it. So there is something on behalf of us we should do it, on behalf of government, and on behalf of the EU. In order to do it well, let's sit together and let's talk about it in the same way to implement it the best possible way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Klisovic. Your discourse, but also for energizing the room. Exactly. We needed that. Now I'm turning to Jeppe. I understand that you wanted to speak on the substance, and please tell us what are the main barriers that cities face in implementing EU and national recommendations.
It's on. Thank you, Matilda. Josko was actually mentioning a lot of these things from the local perspective, but I ticked a series of the things that I have here on my note. I would perhaps like to start a little bit on the discussions and also what's been presented both from you and the colleague regarding the energy poverty definition and the whole process of this within the institutions. It has taken long. It has taken taken unusually long. And it's due to the complexity of the concept, of the phenomenon. And you will see also, if you have followed the progress on this definition work, you will see that it has become increasingly flexible from the EU level and embracing. And I think that's really at the core, and it suits the phenomenon in the sense that at an EU level, there are so many situations that needs to be embraced with this definition. And with this also sort of, if you go at a national level, the EU-wide definition needs to be able to embrace the different national situations, and the national situations need to embrace all the different local situations. So in our guidance, in diagnosing energy poverty from the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, let's say the end of the first circular process of getting a better understanding of energy poverty at local level is sort of defining your local energy poverty definition. That is by now automatically embraced by the EU level's definition, because there's been a hunt for definitions, and that is because a definition will enable the start of an assessment. The assessment will lead to a diagnosis, that will lead to a plan, that will lead to actions. So very often, starting with the definition actually kickstarts this process. And the closer we go to the citizens level and the people actually in need, the more precise this definition can be, the more precise the assessment will be, the more precise and detailed the plan will be, and the more impactful the action will be, and the more impactful and cost-efficient this action will be. And as we just heard Rafal said, the mayor of Warsaw, this is very, very expensive. But I think I would like to add to that, it's much more expensive not to do anything. And in order to do so, I have a short list of things. Josko, you mentioned some of the things, but coming back to the different sort of embracing definitions that we are dealing with here, a common lingo is important. Energy poverty has been around for long, but often it's been in a niche, in a community, but now it's basically, as you just saw with the raised hands as well, it's something that's on the mind of everybody, in particular now with the fossil fuel crisis, the invasion in Ukraine, etc. It's just exacerbating the situation and therefore the need for this agenda. And we are in the situation where we can actually, right here in this room, with the presence of the Commission, with the presence of many local authorities, help in shaping this lingo. So whenever the local authorities are talking about energy poverty, the national level exactly understand what is it that we are talking about, what is the situation on the ground, and that will help us to get sort of a clearer connection on the vertical integration of this topic. So a common lingo, please help us shape it. We're doing whatever we can in the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub to do so by asking you putting it in writing, asking you again, putting it in writing, and so on and so forth. Many of you have already been a part of that process, and many of you will be a part of the process here later today. Then breaking of the silos, I think that's very important in the sense that what I mentioned before, it's a complex phenomenon. It's for sure a socio-technical, economical challenge, which means that all of a sudden we cannot just tell the social department, well, that's your issue, or the economical department, so please put up the financing scheme to organize this, or the engineers to solve this issue. Here we also need to understand each other, and I can see that the different local authorities we are working with, depending on where we are on the European map, are having very different approaches to this integration. So there's also an invitation for you to speak to the person next to you a little later. Then there's the matter of skills. In the municipalities, as it is a fairly new phenomenon, there's a lot of people that can see it happening right outside their window on the street, but they may not necessarily have the necessary skills to take the actions, in the most effective way. So that's also something we need to help each other with. And in the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, we are again asking you for the best ways you have been doing it, so that we can sort of compile these and share them with each other. And I think we need to also dive into the substance of our municipalities, which is our citizens. We in municipalities not only need skills in sort of tackling this phenomenon, but we also need to integrate our citizens into the planning and the implementation of these actions. And then my fifth point is, it is just actions. We need to act. Yes, it's important that we get the data so we get impactful actions, but we should not spend the whole budget in finding data, so there's nothing left for actions. So keep that balance in mind. Sixth, I would like to mention the topic of trust. We're dealing with vulnerable people here, as any public authorities, whether it's national or local level. It is an authority. Authorities, if you are vulnerable, you're sometimes in having a connection with authorities, but not in, let's say, more in a stick way than in a positive way. So there also needs to be sort of an understanding of the vulnerable. I mean, we should never stop with trying to understand better the different situations and the different sort of the different lives on the ground, because addressing vulnerable is basically that interaction that leads to a change of their situation. So I think that's in short from my side. It's challenges, but also new opportunities. No?
Thank you very much, Jeppe. I'm now turning to the two representatives of the City of Warsaw. Mrs. Dorota Zawadzka-Stepniak, it's correct. You are Director of Air Protection and Climate Policy Departments at the City of Warsaw. So can you speak to us about this Green Warsaw initiative, and how does it contribute to alleviate energy poverty?
Yeah, thank you very much. But before answering your question, I would like to a little bit address some issue which was mentioned by my colleagues, because I think I of course fully agree. Definition is important, breaking silos is important, integration is important, skills are important. But what I think is also important is the cooperation between cities. I mean, exchange good practices, exchange knowledge is something which which we can build on, and it's also very important in terms of the green transformation of our cities, not only to fight against energy poverty, but it's also to specify, to set up a roadmap for every city in their climate neutrality goals. And coming back now to your question, the Warsaw already set up a green vision of Warsaw called Green City and Climate Action Plan. Quite recently, April this year, the City Council accepted this document, and it is for us the roadmap for the transformation of the city of different sectors. Of course, not only energy sector, but also transport, blue and green infrastructure, also waste management, and also improvement of skills, general skills in the city. And this document is really of the highest importance because it specifies 27 activities which will be implemented in the city for the next years. Of course, one of the very important area where we really want to spend money and, of course, spend our resources are buildings. As was already mentioned by my mayor, we have approximately 2,000 municipal buildings. Approximately 77% of these buildings require really renovation as soon as possible. In terms of residential buildings, we have nearly 90,000 of these buildings in the city, and most of them, or high share of them, also requires renovation, retrofitting. I would say that the biggest challenge which we see once working on the green vision of Warsaw, the biggest challenge are related to the sector of buildings, because these buildings are responsible for 80% of the greenhouse gases emissions. So we know that to achieve climate neutrality goal, which we set up, of course, for 2050, like the whole EU, we really need to put efforts in that sector in terms of retrofitting. But because I mentioned this cooperation between cities, we already, as Zagreb is, we are all in 100 mission initiative of the European Commission, where we cooperate very, very closely with, of course, different stakeholders, but we cooperate very closely with other cities in the road to climate neutrality. And already in that mission, probably you heard about this initiative, 100 mission cities, smart cities and climate neutral cities by even 2030, so earlier than our goal. So this initiative supports us in the transformation by advisory support, but also in that project we can supply, or we can apply for external projects like pilot projects, and one of them will be dedicated to net zero emission environmental sustainable territories, which will be implemented in other Polish cities being in the mission. But taking a little bit of the overview, one of the action in the city vision is related to prevent or to fight against energy poverty. And already in that action, we started the implementation of the programs for the deep renovation, deep retrofitting of buildings, but also of the eliminating of coal-fired or fossil fuel-fired installations in our citizens, I mean for our citizens. So already from 2018, nearly 4,000 inefficient coal-fired boilers were removed, and of course we offer our citizens the grant support for this action, and of course we promote very much the renewables like heat pumps, and now very often we propose heat pumps with the photovoltaic installations, and I would say that both of our programs, because we have two of them for the elimination of coal-fired installations, and the second one for renewables in our citizens. So both of them are really of the highest interests of our citizens. And this green vision of Warsaw for us is a lighthouse. It's a really document which hopefully can easily, but maybe not so. I'm just thinking if it's easily, the road to climate neutrality, if you have concrete goals and concrete actions, I would say it's not so easy. But I would say that with the financial support, and we are still looking forward to having the financing from the Recovery and Resilience Facility. We are also looking forward to having money from the cohesion policy. But I hope that with the support of financial support, and with the support in terms of also of capacities and building our actions at the local level, we could achieve this very ambitious and very important goal of climate neutrality. And maybe the last point, because it is something which maybe some of my Polish colleagues can be interested in, we are also part, as Warsaw, of the national programs for prevent or to fight against energy poverty, called Stop Smoke. It's the National Fund for Environmental Protection and Water Management Program, where we are part of, and we want to make a deep renovation, deep retrofitting of 200 single-use buildings. Also with the change of the heating of the heating sources, and if some of you would be interested in cooperation with us under the implementation of this certain program, please contact me directly. I would be more than happy to discuss that issue, because what I also see in terms of energy poverty, apart from, of course, the problem with not having enough money for meet heat needs, is also the lack of direct support for these people. When I'm talking about lack of support, I'm talking about having some energy advisors, which we already implemented in Warsaw, so every citizen can come to a certain point asking, what you can do, what I can do, what sort of technologies I can implement. But what is still lacking is that some of people being in energy poverty cannot even have the information, or cannot even have a clue to come and ask for support. So I would say three things which was mentioned by my colleague: financing, resources, but I would say also resources to being closer to the people being in energy poverty.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Director, as you are here with also Mr. Dragos Leszek, who is Deputy Director of Department of Infrastructure at the City of Warsaw. So we have both the Department of Infrastructure and Air Protection and Climate Policy.
We cooperate very closely.
Well, I'm you guessed my question. I want to know more about your cooperation between your services.
Should I start, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Both your visions are interesting.
I said that we really cooperate very closely, because climate issues and the really deep transformation of our city towards climate neutrality will require, of course, cooperation and breaking silos, which was mentioned before. We already started this cooperation not only between our department but also other departments in the city. Once we prepared the Green Vision of Warsaw, it was a really long 2 years journey where we had to really set up goals and set up concrete actions. And now we have a document which is really a holistic vision, also data-driven and really comprehensive. So really this cooperation now at the phase of the implementation is crucial. And when I'm talking about this horizontal cooperation, we have an idea, and hopefully to implement it very, very shortly, is to have something like a climate committee or climate team composed of course of senior representatives of different departments, also under the umbrella of our mayor, who is really very much interested in this green transformation, and also to make a certain decision not only by my department, who is responsible for climate policy, but making decisions also in the cooperation with others. Because what I think, and maybe I say something not very politically correct, but because I'm coming to the city from outside. I mean, I'm a fan of Director Grzegorz, who spent the whole life in the city, but I spent my professional life working both at the national level, but working also in private sector, in big consulting. So and also for some time in NGO. So I know how the cooperation is important, but what I saw once coming to the city is that every department has its own, regulations. They know what to do, and once I, for example, wanted to make, for example, interdepartments team for example for the project, for applying for Horizon 2020 or some other source of financing, it was not so easy to build such a team which composed of people from different departments, because every department has its own director and its own regulations. And I think that really breaking the silos is not only dedicated to the city of Warsaw. I mean, breaking the silos is also a key for the transformation of business. It's a key for the transformation also of ministries of the national level, and really it is something which can be of our interest. And really final thing which will start the cooperation already from the beginning of October. We decided in cooperation with European Bank for Reconstruction and Development to implement in the city a pilot project dedicated to the climate governance. It's a set of processes, schemes and mechanisms to have the chance to implement climate issues, climate goals, and after that also climate monitoring in all actions which will be implemented at the city level. The first step would be dedicated to climate proofing. So climate proofing for the implementing of certain strategies, and after that investments. But I really hope it will be a first step also to involve others. I mean, involve other representatives of other departments, other units also of the city in the process of the implementation of certain action in Warsaw. Yeah.
Yeah, we are really willing to know the infrastructure point of view now. Mr. Liszczek.
What can I add from my perspective? Pretty longer in City Hall, 34 years, and so because I was still in the same area in this starting from the beginning. I was in the sector of infrastructure, responsible for the energy, for transportation, for solid waste management and some other aspects. So I think that the collaboration was a crucial word from the beginning of my work. So it was still necessary to find some common ideas how to work together. And of course, when we take into account energy poverty aspect, so it is necessary to remember about that kind of departments like education department, like social affairs department, like people working in social housing department. So we have a lot of areas we covered this participation working together. And of course, I think that we started with this work just after 2-3 years after our work in European Union from 2004. So it was like 2006, 2007, where we established our local energy policy. And when we established this, we had in our heads in the beginning two things. So how to make energy prices possible to adopt for the citizens, for of course our businesses in our city and so on, as well as city administration. And the other element was energy security. In the beginning, we didn't take into account climate aspects of the energy. And we started from something like thinking about energy poverty as a problem. But we didn't take this in the holistic way. So this beginning was just to think about one aspect. And year by year we learned, joining for instance Covenant of Mayors initiative and joining other initiatives, we realized that this problem with the cost of energy is not one of the most important. Most important thing is to work with our partners, with citizens, to teach them how to reduce energy consumption. So this is like not to bring people fish. This is like more to bring them fishing pole and teach them fishing. And so we are doing this. We have been doing this pretty long time. From the years also together with Polish Network of Energie-Cités. I'm also in two heads today because I'm also president of Polish Network of Energie-Cités, Poland. And so from this perspective, cooperation with Energie-Cités, we also work with this Covenant of Mayors initiative as an organization being responsible for that dissemination of these ideas of Covenant of Mayors. And thanks to this, also Polish Network of Energie-Cités currently is Energy Poverty Advisory Hub platform for the national level to disseminate ideas, to disseminate good practices, and to help with the networking for our local administrations. And from this perspective, as I said, cooperation is something what is necessary to have every day in our minds. And also, when we think about what the mayor Trzaskowski said, that last 12 months, for instance, we on local levels in Poland, we were involved in some kind of strange works, like for instance distribution of hard coal. We had to establish companies in every local administration company for distributing of hard coal to small amount of citizens, like I don't know, in Warsaw it was maybe 1,000 households to deliver them hard coal. It was crazy, but it was a lot of work. We stopped teaching people how to fish. We stopped them fishing. We had to start to bring them baked, cooked fish for this moment. It was something what it was. Mike, it was something what made a mess in the heads of our citizens, but also it made a mess in our heads. What are we doing? So from this perspective, this is something what also it was important to make another conversation in our internal partners in our city hall, to explain them why we are stopping some very good, interesting projects. We are now concentrate only for some specific activities, like deliver subsidies for citizens, like deliver them hard coal, for instance. And so I think that we know that situation that every institution inside, even inside of City Hall, is something like island, living in some different rules. The same, for instance, is in the European Commission, like, I don't know, DG Energy and DG Agriculture, how to find some common areas to work, and we are doing the same. We are looking for that ways to establish cooperation, to bring people solutions. So this is, I think, something what is necessary to say in the beginning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We only have 10 minutes left, so I'd like just to ask you one question to each of you, and maybe if you had only one recommendation to an EU or national policymaker to tackle, of course, energy poverty, what would it be?
To have one recommendation to whom? To European Union officials, to national officials, to the citizens, to whom? Because I have a different message for each of them.
Well, pick up the one you,
okay,
you wanted to absolutely say today.
Then I will pick up the EU officials. Why them? Because it seems they are largely part of the solution, if they take proper decisions on our behalf. And when I say proper decisions, this means that we as a local authorities, as citizens, must be heard in Brussels. We cannot just be, in this very important question, represented by our national governments. We have Committee of Regions in Brussels. This is EU institution. So what I'm proposing to the EU officials in the Commission and in the Parliament, they listen our representative. And to be honest, our chair of our Committee for Environment, Climate Change and Energy is Rafał Trzaskowski, a mayor of Warsaw. So he or anybody else we empower to represent our voice in discussions within the European Commission, within the Parliament, and joint discussion, just to inform, decision makers what's going on the ground. Because very often we do not have adequate data on the basis of which we are making decisions. And then what people in Brussels do, they just give the contract to one consultancy agency, so please make research, tell me. But what they can do, they can just make a poll, ask the local authorities, ask the citizens to fill up the form, and then, to use some methodology and come to certain conclusions. But all these data we do have in our cities. We know how many people are really paying bills on time and are not paying bills on time because they are paying to our municipal companies who are rendering these services to the citizens. We know how many houses are energy efficient and how many of them are not, because they are houses and we have all the data necessary for them. So we have all the necessary data to make a proper decision. And then we can say really what we lack to implement such an ambitious plans, policies and measures. And as I said, usually we lack skillful personnel. We have some, but not enough. We need financial resources which are very smartly allocated, very smartly, to support policy goals. And then we need, as I said, to be part of decision-making process. So these three messages I have for the officials in Brussels. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeppe, maybe, if you want to react.
I did
I think everything and much more than what I have here has already been said. Perhaps I'd like to address all levels of governance, meaning that there's a big risk here of being vague, but I'll take that risk. Because I just want to basically remind you of that we all have to support each other and collaborate on the common lingo, on breaking the silos, on support for upskilling in this process, on focusing on citizen engagement, on a distinct focus on actions on the ground, because that's where people's lives are changed. And again, the element of trust between authorities and the citizens in need. Because we cannot afford not to think energy poverty into any climate and energy planning we are doing in the future. It's with the goal of climate neutrality, we also need to have the most vulnerable over this finishing line. And we've only won this race when the last one is passing this finishing line. And we also know that focusing on the most vulnerable, on those, on the energy poor, is the biggest bang for the buck. We will get a much higher lift if we invest in the most vulnerables, which are often living in the worst household when it comes to energy efficiency, for instance. So if we do so, hopefully we do not have to put all our faith in the new renewable energy directives that can ensure no volatility in the energy prices. We will be more resilient, so we do not need an earthquake in order for us to take actions, and we will be much better suited to avoid going back to boiled fish. So I think that's sort of the vague message here to all levels.
Just a question, do we have representatives of our Polish ministries somewhere on the audience? Okay, so yeah, I would say that it's also a signal. I mean, it's okay. Yeah, but the problem which we really have, and it will be my message to the national level, that please listen to us, because we are really close to people, and we can hear what they suffer for, and also we are responsible for the implementation of certain actions. And really, I know that it's difficult, like in Croatia, we have the same problem in Poland, having some challenges in the cooperation between local and national level. But really, apart from this division, apart from seeing, policies and politics in that, please, contact us and please cooperate with us, because really, actions at the national and local level should be coordinated, and without demarcations, without agreement on the certain definition of energy poverty, without a certain financing support coming from the national level and coming also from the European level, we will not achieve our goals. So my message would be, we are really open for the cooperation, and please contact us, please cooperate with us. And really, the aims, climate neutrality goal is not only a goal of the cities. It's a goal for business, it's a goal also for the national level. So, yeah, it would be maybe this sort of message.
So from my perspective, I think that when we look at the European Commission and the European Union itself, so it is something what we probably in many cases in Warsaw, for instance, we understand better what we hear from Brussels than sometimes what we hear from our Polish government. But from the other side, I think that if I could send kind of message to European Union, to European Commission, I could say that maybe with the full respect of current works, for instance, like Fit for 55 and some other important documents, but I think that it would be very good to have also very big interest to work with implementation, because in many cases we do a lot to make good documents, but after that we are not struggle really hard to implement this deeply with the deep understanding and that kind of everything what is necessary to go to our administrations, to go to our citizens, to give them the real tools for the work. So I have a lot of examples of directives we had to reinterpret in years after beginning of the implementation. Second or third level of understanding of this. It would be good to know very well from the beginning our way, where are we going, and the way of implementation. So I think that work with the implementation is very important, and it would be really fruitful also for us, local administrations.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all for your participation and very inspiring speeches. Well, implementation definitely is a work that we need, and so stabilization, I would say, of the EU legal framework. I think it's really important. It's a key message that we are also providing. I would say that just the Commission is here, so it's listening, and it's also taking notes, and this kind of conference is also very important to have feedbacks from the ground and from your experience, and we are really carefully listening to your experience, and EPAH is, I think, a very good tool for that, for networking, but also for making links between all of us and all this multi-level approach that we are all seeking. So you spoke about the definition of energy poverty. I think it's also a key, and that we now have a stabilized definition. It's also very important for the future, even if it took time. I noted also in your intervention the importance of funding and the importance of matching the projects with the available funding and reciprocity. I think it's also very relevant. You mentioned, and we really developed on the governance at all levels, and the need to involve stakeholders, to involve local governments and break the silos, even in all organizations, even the European Commission. It's key for the transformation, as you said. I have to say that we are really trying to do that on energy poverty, and we are really developing several instances with the stakeholders, with the member states. We have a coordination group on energy poverty with member states. We, as mentioned before, we are working at the moment on a new recommendation on energy poverty, and for that we set up a stakeholder contact group at EU level in Brussels, but still to have also feedbacks from you and from all the relevant levels. We also spoke about skills, which are really key also, and that will be the theme of the next roundtable. And another key word I pick up this morning is networking, and I think it's now the good time for networking, with a good pose for learning from each others. Thank you very much.
Sorry. I have it somewhere. Break.
Welcome everyone to this second panel. I ask the panelists to join me on the stage so we can start. First, Piotr Ordzyczowski, the Deputy Mayor of Zamość. Sorry if the pronunciation. You can repeat your name after. Then Marta Saiz from the Empresa Municipal del Suelo y la Vivienda de Getafe, Spain. Then here with me on stage, please, Mirto Skorupati, Environmental Engineer for the Cyprus Energy Agency. Marina Barbesi, Director of Rete Assist and part of the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub. And Anna Mari Majancic, Senior Expert for the organization Croatia. I will keep the introduction very short because I think skills has been addressed all the morning. And for this reason, I think the first skills I needed to understand is stop preparing the introductory speech because they don't work, because people already addressed all the key points I wanted to say before. But just to sum up, when we talk about skills to address energy poverty, we are talking about a complex system of capacity we need to improve. At the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, we are in a very good position because we have the chance to speak with different municipalities, with different experts, and we keep learning day by day about what's happening on the ground. And this, for me, it's the key. Listening what the other people have to say every moment. So for me, this conference, it's basically a long-lasting 2 days of learning and new skills from each other's. When we talk about specific topics, it's important to keep in mind that energy poverty, as said before, needs to be covered by a series of different horizontal topics. It involves social skills, emotional intelligence, technical skills, knowledge of law and regulations, and many more. This reflects also on the fact of collaborating at different levels with different departments and stakeholders. But addressing skills of energy poverty, it's not only about the topic, it's also about the people we want to address. We have seen even this morning, people not only mentioning skills both for municipal staff, vulnerable consumers, and other type of stakeholders, but also in the subtle way, giving their own experience on how when they started addressing energy poverty, the goal was completely different on how it changed 2-3 years after. And this means a long-lasting learning process that is shared at local level, at municipal level, among the citizens and all the people. I'm happy today to have here representatives of very different organizations that will give us the chance to understand how they approached the learning process on energy poverty. I will start with the Deputy Mayor of Zamość. He will speak in Polish, so we will have direct translations. So, we know that the Zamość municipality have implemented different activities for the residents to increase awareness. Can you tell us more about what you have done?
Hello everyone. Let me speak in Polish because I got a great translator that will be easier for me. Dziękuję bardzo, Szanowni Państwo, za zaproszenie do udziału w tym bardzo ciekawym, inspirującym wydarzeniu. Bardzo dziękuję Stowarzyszeniu Energie-Cités, ponieważ dzięki kooperacji z tym stowarzyszeniem miasto Zamość i mieszkańcy miasta Zamość bardzo dużo zyskują. Na początek kilka słów o mieście Zamość, ponieważ zapewne Państwo niezbyt orientują się, gdzie leży. To 60-tysięczne miasto. Leżymy około 60 km od granicy polsko-ukraińskiej, a więc graniczymy z krajem bardzo niedaleko. Mamy do kraju, którym toczy się akurat wojna. Miasto Zamość leży na terenach ogólnie określanych jako tereny rolnicze, jako tereny leśne. Niemniej jednak naszym największym atutem jest turystyka i nasze dziedzictwo kulturowe, dziedzictwo architektoniczne, ponieważ Zamość jest nazywany perłą renesansu i od 1992 roku znajduje się na liście Światowego Dziedzictwa UNESCO.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say hello and I'd like to thank you for this invitation to participate in this great, interesting, inspiring event. I'd also like to thank you, PNEC, which is the Polish Network of Municipalities Energie-Cités, for our great cooperation, which brings a lot of benefits for people who live in my city, the city of Zamość. You may not know so much about Zamość. Zamość is a city that has 60,000 inhabitants, and we are just 60 kilometers away from the border between Poland and Ukraine. Ukraine, which is a country where there is war right now. In our region, we have a lot of agriculture, a lot of forestry, but also we are very, very proud of our cultural heritage. We have a lot of tourism. We are also very proud of our architecture, which dates back to the time of Renaissance, and our old town has been put on the UNESCO list of World Heritage.
Szanowni Państwo, co zostało zrobione w ciągu ostatnich lat? Bardzo jesteśmy zadowoleni z faktu uczestnictwa w programach, w których uczestniczymy dzięki współpracy ze Stowarzyszeniem Energie-Cités. Chodzi o program m.in. ENPOWER i teraz program EPAH. I czy w Zamościu wiemy, co to jest ubóstwo energetyczne? Wiemy. Czy walczymy z tym zjawiskiem? Podejmujemy działania na rzecz zmniejszenia ubóstwa energetycznego? Oczywiście robimy. Czy mamy poczucie, że wszystko zostało zrobione? Oczywiście nie. I dlatego właśnie bardzo cieszymy się, że ten udział w programie EPAH, w tym obecnym programie, do którego dostaliśmy się na początku 2022 roku wraz z miastem Bydgoszcz, czy jako jedyne miasta w Polsce w ramach pierwszego naboru do programu EPAH. Właśnie bardzo się cieszymy, że możemy pogłębiać swoją wiedzę.
And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what has been done in recent years in Zamość. We are very happy to have participated in numerous programs which have been facilitated by the Polish Network of Municipalities Energie-Cités. Programs like ENPOWER, which stands for Energy Poverty, or this Energy Poverty Advisory Hub program. Let me answer the following question. Do we know what energy poverty is? Yes, we do. Do we have that problem in our city? Yes, we do. Are we trying to combat that problem? Yes, we are. Do we feel like everything has already been done? No, we don't. Not everything has been done yet. So we are very happy to have joined this program at the beginning of 2022. We've been accepted together with Bydgoszcz. It's just these two Polish cities that are participating in this program after the first call. So we are very happy to extend our knowledge by participating in this program offered by the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub.
Na początku dzisiejszego spotkania pan prezydent Rafał Trzaskowski powiedział, że przystosowanie się do zmian, podjęcie działań kosztuje drogo, ale nie robienie nic kosztuje jeszcze drożej. No i my z tego założenia również wychodzimy. I chciałbym Państwu opowiedzieć o tym, w jakich kierunkach postępują nasze działania, więc na pewno bardzo ważnym elementem jest gruntowna modernizacja systemu dróg. Chcielibyśmy, aby kierowcy poruszający się ulicami miasta poruszali się w sposób bezpieczny, ale też w sposób komfortowy. Dlatego tutaj już od kilku lat realizujemy kilkuletnie plany remontu, modernizacji systemu dróg. Podejmujemy również działania na rzecz zrównoważonego rozwoju transportu, a więc chciałbym Państwu zakomunikować, że jesienią tego roku, a więc już za kilka miesięcy będziemy mieli do dyspozycji taki solidny tabor 14 autobusów o napędzie elektrycznym, 10 takich zwykłych autobusów i 4 przegubowce. I środki na ten cel w znacznej mierze pozyskaliśmy z Narodowego Funduszu Ochrony Środowiska, a więc tutaj transport publiczny będzie już w znacznej mierze opierał się na autobusach elektrycznych i na pewno nie jest to nasze ostatnie słowo w tej sprawie. Jeżeli chodzi o... Tak?
And in the beginning of our event, there was a speech delivered by the mayor of Warsaw, Rafał Trzaskowski, and he said that indeed it is very expensive to adjust, to take actions, but it's even more expensive to remain passive, not to do anything. And we think so too in Zamość, and that's why we are doing what we are doing. And just to give you a few examples, we have a program of in-depth modernization of our road system. We want driving in our city to be both safe and comfortable. So that's what we've been doing for years. We also have different actions with regard to sustainable transportation. In autumn this year, we will already have a significant fleet of 14 electric buses, and the funds for that project have been acquired from the National Fund of Environmental Protection. So public transport, that's one thing. We want it to be based on electrical buses.
Podjęliśmy, Szanowni Państwo, również działania na rzecz adaptacji do zmian klimatu i mam tutaj na myśli bardzo duży program modernizacji, termomodernizacji obiektów użyteczności publicznej. Mam tu na myśli chociażby nasze jednostki oświatowe, mam tu na myśli również nasze instytucje kultury, które nie tylko stermomodernizowaliśmy, ale także wyposażyliśmy chociażby o pompy ciepła, a także instalacje fotowoltaiczne o górnej mocy do 50 kW. Chciałbym też powiedzieć o tym, że też modernizujemy również oświetlenie uliczne. Zmieniamy stare oprawy sodowe na oprawy LEDowe, które mają również ten walor, że pozwalają także na regulację natężenia świecenia i ma to bardzo duże znaczenie w tych okresach jesiennych, zimowych, kiedy tam po północy ten ruch i zapotrzebowanie na światło jest mniejsze i to też pozwala nam oszczędzać energię. I najważniejszą rzeczą na tym etapie wypowiedzi myślę, że jest taki system wymiany starych systemów grzewczych, tak zwanych kopciuchów opalanych na węgiel, na piece gazowe. No i Szanowni Państwo, my ten program rozpoczęliśmy w 2017 roku, a więc na kilka lat przed startem programu Czyste Powietrze. I w tej chwili około 800 gospodarstw domowych skorzystało z tego programu. Taką górną granicą dofinansowania jest 60% i naprawdę jest to program warty podkreślenia, którym się bardzo chętnie chwalimy.
We are also taking up actions with regard to adapting to the climate change. We have invested in the retrofitting of public buildings like schools or cultural institutions. So they have been retrofitted, but they have also been provided with heating pumps or photovoltaic installations up to 50 kilowatts. Also, we have invested in our street lighting system. We want LED lamps to be used, and the advantage of those is that you can adjust the intensity. Sometimes you need more, sometimes you need less, like after midnight or in autumn and winter. Another area in which we are active, that's the changing of the old coal-fired heating installations, the black smoke belching stoves. We want them to be replaced with gas-fired installations, and we started that program back in 2017, so even before the National Clean Air program was initiated, and 800 households have received funds covering up to 60% of the costs. So we are very proud of that. We think it's been very successful.
I ostatni obszar, mam na myśli edukację, a więc bardzo duże znaczenie ma dla nas edukowanie naszych mieszkańców w temacie oszczędzania energii, w temacie racjonalnego wykorzystania tej energii. Myślę, że taką najprostszą drogą byłaby, Szanowni Państwo, zaangażowanie środków finansowych w budowę infrastruktury. No ale wiadomo, że jak każdy samorząd mamy ograniczone środki finansowe, a więc trzeba rozpoczynać od tych małych rzeczy. No i tymi małymi rzeczami właśnie są chociażby lekcje energetyczne w zamojskich szkołach. W ramach programu Empower właśnie objęliśmy patronatem 3 szkoły z terenu miasta Zamość, w których były przeprowadzone lekcje energetyczne. I nie mamy żadnych wątpliwości właśnie, że te dobre nawyki, te informacje, które uczniowie usłyszeli podczas tych lekcji energetycznych, zostały przekazane dalej, do ich domostw, do ich rodziców i rodzeństwa, a także najbliższych, i myślę, że to jest jakby najlepszy i najcenniejszy skutek tych lekcji. Też w ramach tego programu Empower nawiązaliśmy taką autorską, unikalną współpracę z naszym miastem partnerskim w Niemczech. Jest to miasto Schwäbisch Hall, nieopodal Stuttgartu. No i właśnie połączyliśmy siły placówek oświatowych z terenu Zamościa i Schwäbisch Hall i zrobiliśmy taką ekologiczną, energetyczną rywalizację uczniów. Oczywiście w ramach zabawy, w ramach konkursu, i to też przyniosło bardzo solidne skutki.
And the last area I would like to talk about, that's the area of education. It's very important for us to educate our citizens. We want to educate them on how to save energy, on how to use energy reasonably. And of course it's best to invest in infrastructure, but we just do not have the funds it takes, which is understandable. We're just a municipality. So if you do not have the money it takes to invest in infrastructure, you need to start with small things like education, like providing lessons on how to use energy reasonably at schools, and we've done that within the EPAH program. 3 schools have been involved, and we've taught our kids, our students, on how to use energy in a reasonable way. We've taught them some good habits, and it works because they always spread these good habits when they go to back home and talk to their parents or grandparents. So that's the EPAH program. Within that program, we also have some successful cooperation with our partner city in Germany, Schwäbisch Hall, close to Stuttgart. So our schools in Zamość and those in Schwäbisch Hall, have been cooperating and have organized a competition, an energy competition for kids. That's been a lot of fun, and we are very happy with the tangible results we've achieved.
Jako że jestem urodzonym pesymistą, to chciałbym na koniec powiedzieć o trudnościach, bo nie jest tak kolorowo, jak mogłoby się wydawać. Też mierzymy się z trudnościami, z problemami w zwalczaniu ubóstwa energetycznego. Szanowni Państwo, stawiamy na dialog, na daleko idącą współpracę z organizacjami pozarządowymi, z grupami społecznymi, z grupami działania, także z miejskimi radnymi, z naszymi spółkami miejskimi. No i właśnie w toku tych konsultacji, tego porozumienia określamy interesariuszy naszych działań. No i tak na dobrą sprawę może największym problemem jest właśnie ubóstwo energetyczne w niektórych obszarach miasta. Wystarczy przejść się przez chociażby nasz zamojski zespół staromiejski, który jest naszą perełką. Powodem do wielkiej dumy, chwalimy się tym na każdym kroku. Niemniej jednak trzeba też pamiętać, że zespół staromiejski, który jest na liście UNESCO, jest objęty ochroną konserwatorską. No i właśnie niektóre działania na rzecz zminimalizowania ubóstwa energetycznego nie mogą być w zespole staromiejskim podjęte. Są bloki kamienic, w których nie ma centralnego ogrzewania, tylko są opalane takimi tradycyjnymi piecami kaflowymi. I nie ma możliwości, przepraszam za określenie, ale jakby rozprucia całego rynku, aby poprowadzić tam linie cieplne. Tak więc to jest nie do przeskoczenia. Dużym problemem jest też fakt, że nie możemy zainstalować na dachach zabytkowych kamienic paneli fotowoltaicznych i to jest nie do przeskoczenia w tej chwili, aczkolwiek z tego co wiem, są prowadzone rozmowy z Narodowym Instytutem Dziedzictwa, aby te rygorystyczne, restrykcyjne przepisy nieco złagodzić.
However, I'm rather pessimistic as a person, so to conclude, I would like to talk about the problems that we have. It's not as bright as it looks. We do have problems when it comes to combating energy poverty, but we always want to use the opportunity of having a good dialogue with all our stakeholders, with NGOs, with local businesses, with municipality businesses, with the members of our city council. And when it comes to energy poverty, there are certain areas, certain districts in our city which are most affected. And that's our old town. Our old town is very beautiful. It's full of historical buildings. We are very proud of that district. However, as it is on the UNESCO list, it is subject to monument protection. And since it's subject to monument protection, we can't modernize it the normal way, the standard way. You cannot make excavations in the old town to distribute a central heating network underground, for example. It's also not okay to have photovoltaic installations on the roofs of those historic buildings. So now we are talking to the authorities, to the Polish central authorities, which are responsible for monument protection, and they might actually allow us to put some photovoltaic installations on the roofs of those buildings. We'll see what the outcome will be.
I tak na koniec mojej wypowiedzi w tej części, Szanowni Państwo, przysłuchując się moim szanownym przedmówcom, którzy opowiadali o problemach ubóstwa energetycznego w skali makro, na poziomie dużych miast, na poziomie krajowym czy poziomie europejskim, to stwierdzam, że nasze problemy wiele nie różnią się od tych problemów większych miast, tylko oczywiście w mniejszej skali. Niemniej jednak chciałbym jakby zaznaczyć, że dla nas najważniejszy jest dialog, udział strony społecznej. Staramy się wymieniać informacjami właśnie z podmiotami, o których wspomniałem nieco wcześniej, i to daje bardzo bogaty materiał i do pracy, do analizy, i naprawdę staramy się jakby rozpoczynać nasze działania od takich małych rzeczy, od edukacji wśród najmłodszych. To jest w tej chwili najważniejsze i też jesteśmy bardzo aktywni w pozyskiwaniu środków zewnętrznych, aby te nieco większe, nieco bardziej istotne tematy również poruszać. Na tyle w tej chwili. Dziękuję.
So just to conclude, one remark. My colleagues have been talking about energy poverty on the macro level, on the level of big cities, on the national level of the member states, on the EU level. However, our problems, the problems of smaller towns, seem very similar. They are just on a smaller scale. And the basis for what we do, for our work, that's the dialogue and the participation of people, the exchange of information. We need to remember that we have to start with small things, making small steps, like the area of education, and we are also very active when it comes to acquiring funds for investments. And that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for this detailed overview of what Zamość is doing to tackle energy poverty, and to the translator that offered the impromptu translation. Let's now move to another municipality, that is Getafe in Spain. So this municipality has a large project with a very ambitious name, the Energy Poverty Intelligence Unit. Can you please tell us more about this project, how it has been designed to improve many professionals?
Hi everyone. First, I would like to apologize for my English. This is not gonna take so long as him, because he's a big talker. First, I would like to explain a little bit the project. We are working in two neighborhoods, Margaritas and Alhóndiga in Getafe. And I have some slides. Here you can see the same typology of buildings. They are the difference, the Margaritas and Alhóndiga, with all that homes, and we are acting over there to rehabilitation of the buildings. Then, second one for the question, to improve the skill of professionals, first we identify that it would be so important.
Sorry, can I tell you to try to change a microphone, because it's a little bit low probably.
Now? Oh, yes. Okay. Then we identified that the problem was the training for the partners. Then, to improve the skills of the professionals, we have three main working lines. First one, it was the training for the construction professionals, because it's really important that the construction professionals are close to the passive and active measures for the energy efficiency. And the project team performance training in the following main points: thermal insulation in buildings and homes, energy efficiency training, and renewable energy and window installations. For us, it's very important two parts. First is the passive measures, and then is the active. And after that, then when that is solved, is the renewable energy. And the second skills for the professionals are training, but for the public service healthy homes. The personal training of the office, it's a key point for the proper development of the project, as it becomes the centerpiece to transmit to citizens the high importance of energy poverty and how to handle it, how they can teach locals how to reduce the energy and disseminate all the ideas, because it's the most important that they understand and can to teach to all the citizens to really understand how the difficult is the energy poverty. And the last one, it was training for the municipal officials, because it's one of the partners of the project, and they have the power to change about the policies. And it's so important the municipal officers understand the meaning of energy poverty, because the process could be shared about the financial and legal documents. And the knowledge of the data is also so important to improve the bureaucratic activities.
Thank you very much. So we saw that during the implementation you had the chance to tackle very different things. What, in your opinion, was the field topic where the professionals needed most empowerment?
Yes, it was because for us the main topic and the milestone, it was the Service Healthy Homes Office. Then the Healthy Homes Office was the principal responsible to transmit to the citizens what is the energy poverty concept and the knowledge to understand the possible impact of the improvements. So they need support from all the project partners, to the whole entire project, in order to better handle vulnerable people situation in all kind of way, to deep understanding how important is the transition to that energy efficiency.
Thank you for your input. Let's move to another country. So we have with us the Cyprus Energy Agency, another type of stakeholders. You know that you have been working with different type of municipalities as energy agency, often small and remote ones. What are the challenges of working with this type of cities?
Hello? Can people hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for the question, Laura, and for the invitation, of course, to be on the panel. Yes, as Cyprus Energy Agency, we were established already at the beginning by the Cypriot Union of Communities, specifically. So we are intrinsically linked with communities and municipalities, but especially communities which are smaller in size. So it's one of our core areas of work, is working with these municipalities and communities to offer some of the expertise and help that they might need because of some of the issues that I might mention now. Specifically with the last call and the technical assistance we gave to one community that was very rural, very remote, and also around 500 people, so we're talking very small communities with a personnel of one. and I encourage you later at the break to talk with Mrs. Mary, who is with us today. Yes, obviously you have many challenges working at that scale compared to bigger municipalities. Obviously the lack of resources and expertise. One person has to do everything in that community, so it's not possible to be an expert in everything. There's also a lack of education and awareness raising. I think this is an issue of the national government, that they are not focusing in these remote areas. And maybe I'm going a bit off script here, but I think because it was said before by the mayor of Warsaw that maybe part of the populist rhetoric that we are seeing is also that the distribution of resources is not equal in that sense as well. So us as well, together with the community, we had this role, and we're trying to have this role of raising awareness, informing about schemes and grants that never reach them, not because they are not, it's not possible to take them, but because they never get the information that these schemes are available. We also, from our side, we have this lack of understanding of the local context. Maybe we have this, and I have to self-reflect a bit, because as engineers we have this high moral ground that we know everything maybe sometimes, but we don't know the local context, and we might have background and previous experiences with other localities, but we need to be able to adjust with the specific context. And finally, a last one is the lack of appropriate funding to match the scale and the needs of these communities, the smaller communities. And I put in brackets here to thank the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub and the technical assistance, because it's one of the rare times and rare moments that there is funding available for that scale of communities. Most of them are unreachable with the level of funding that needs to be mobilized. So this is a very good example of how we can target the problem specifically for the needs of a community. In short.
Thank you also for the notice, because I think one of the skills of being an expert is always be open to learn more. And your direct experience was really inspiring. I wanted to dig a little bit more. So how do you adapt your approach, if you tell us more on these smaller cities compared to other you're working with?
Yes, so we have started working on energy poverty in different contexts back, almost from the beginning, back in 2010, let's say, mostly in cities, in bigger cities, because again, it was easier for them to reach us and start a collaboration in EU projects. We had some big projects in bigger municipalities where we did these energy audits in households to help them understand their needs. And also we had some pilots in energy renovation and upgrade of low-income households. So we had this experience, and what we tried through the years to do is streamline the process and try to customize these audits, these simplified EPCs, let's say, to match the needs of the communities we are working with, or the target group we are working with, and also to make it easier and more transferable, this kind of knowledge, so that an officer in the municipality can apply it without having to get back to us. So it's making it easier for this knowledge to be used. And another example of this that happened not with the specific smaller communities is another project that we're working in under the Resilience and Recovery Fund that has to do specifically with energy poverty and people with disabilities. So this was another target group with specific needs and specific way to approach. And as an able-bodied person, I have to say that I had such a big gap of understanding in that sense. So what we did there is firstly meet up with the representative of that target group, so the National Union of Organizations of People with Disabilities and such, to learn the different kinds of ways that people under this target group are affected, the way to more easily approach them. So a lot of our material was only in text. Not everyone can read that text. A lot of the people we work with to make their applications for grants did not have an email account. So we're talking about literacy in that sense that maybe we don't think in our day-to-day life because we use our phones and our computers all the time. So these are the blind spots, let's say, that we realize through this process that we have and try to adjust and streamline in each case, customize it in each case in order to fit the needs of the people we are trying to help.
Thank you. A lot of food for thought for us. Let's move to the next country, Croatia. So, DOR organization. You have the Power Poor project that introduced the figure of energy supporters and mentors to provide dedicated help to the beneficiaries. What was the training path you designed for them and to make them in an effective role?
Yes, hello to everybody and thank you for invitation here. So I would say that what the best way to approach your beneficiaries or the people that you are targeting, citizens that are probably energy poor citizens, is to train the citizens to approach the citizens. So this is the best way, and we decide to develop this capacity building program to educate energy supporters and mentors, we call them. You can call them energy advisors. And we created this for modules, like in the first you describe what is energy poverty. If your target citizens that you are educating doesn't know about that, we are talking about the gap also here. And of course we present Power Poor project. Then we go to the model 2 that we said this kind of present EU policy, like you present them what is going on in Europe, but then you put it down on the national level. And I will say that if you are lucky or unlucky, in here they have, let's say, national energy poverty definition, so maybe lucky to have it, but you have problem or lucky you don't have it and they are not recognizing that. And then you present the best cases in your country, best examples. So it's different in our 8 partners, but you can also, if you don't have anything, you can use the partners what they have as best case, because you need to present them that there is good initiative, there is that they can do it something if they are wasting their time to train themselves and help their citizens. So there is really good best practices. On Model 3 we went to do the crowdfunding and joint energy initiatives. So we are giving them another approach how to help those citizens. And Model 4 is more for the local authorities, like what is the best cases, what is for the SECAPs and so on. My advice for you always to go to the Power Poor site. You have all those modules there on English and or 8 other languages, and also there is audio if you don't want to read. There is audio. If you want to visualize everything that we spoke about these models, you have audio on our YouTube channel. So I think that's first approach, because as I go around I see that a lot of technical help is more diagnose. So you need to someone who will be on the ground to do the mapping for you. And another approach is also Power Poor toolkit, because even if you are going around you need to map all what you want. Like you need to know what question, what data you want to gather. So maybe first step is to see what Power Poor toolkit is offering, because it's really friendly use questionnaire on 8 languages, also English, and there is like Power Act, Power Target, so you can use it because data collecting is something that I recognize most of the technical help is what they need to do on the field. So if you look as a local authorities here, you need to find the local heroes who will do the mapping, who will approach those citizens, and you need to maybe some data collecting, and those data collecting will be most the benefit for you because you need to create the measures, and these local heroes that are trained energy supporters will be the ones that are approach the citizens and they will talk with them, give them advice, and that's kind of idea for the local authorities to have these 2 different approach. Something that you need data, something that citizens needs, they need advice.
Thank you. So you were mentioning the supporters are citizens to citizens, peer-to-peer. How was the approach of having someone your same situation or similar to approach you? What were the key factors to make them accepted and welcomed from the community? if they were.
Energy crisis, like that was like the most factor for this project. It was lucky to have this because the people were more interested to know about it. For us citizens, it's really unlucky time. So this was something that was a main factor to do the mapping, to do the city, to come to this household, because we have this direct approach. You're knocking on the door, asking the question, and you have this local energy poverty alleviation office, so they can also come to you. But mostly the citizens that are really on energy poor citizens, you need to come to them. They are probably in rural area, and the ones that are maybe approaching you are on the edge of energy poverty. So we need to have this different type of the citizens, different target people that you are targeting. And this was mostly approach, and also you need these local heroes needs to be, you need to trust them, because you are giving data. Like all the citizens are probably, you are asking how much they are spending on their bills. If someone doesn't know you, why will you give this your financial data to them? So trust, and also it was like time of energy crisis in Croatia, Eurozone also problems. So we have Euro and crisis and war in Ukraine. So this is something that people start thinking, and like you go to coffee, and first of all, like small talk is talking about bills, food prices, and everything. So this kind of help you to understand people, what you are energy supporters you're going to give me as advice.
Just a quick question, just because you mentioned it and it attracted my attention. You used the word local hero. Why hero?
Because when he came to you, he's trained. So first he's going to get her data, and if you can ask them to give their half an hour for the data, this is only for maybe creating measures and local authorities. But for him, local hero is when he gave you advice. It is on small measure, medium measure, big investments. And also not just to give you you need to put a PV system. Yeah, when he educates you, he knows that he can maybe do it. But problem is, what is local government or what is national government is offering me as a financial help. So they want to advise about what is going on in the country and where he can find the subsidy. So for him, if that local hero can give that financial help, that's for him being hero.
Thank you very much. So our last panelist, we move to Italy. Rete Assist has a project in multiple countries and is going on thanks to its success. What are the needs the project responds to, and what it made it a success story?
Oh, do you know?
The other?
Let's start. Now we change. Thanks. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting us with the head of Rete Assist. And thanks for the difficult question. And thanks for all your inspiring comments, which made me take even more notes than what I was already planning to say. Let me first start saying that the ASSIS project started off in 2017, so when energy poverty was really not on the agenda. Because now, after the energy crisis, after the work of EPAH, energy poverty is on the agenda of a lot of municipalities, but back there in 2017, energy poverty was still a very limited area. And so the main problem we had, and probably it's the problem that still some municipalities or some social actors are facing now, that, okay, we had a difficult winter, but still, what is energy poverty? There is not a definition everywhere. So the first difficulty was really to get the people, all the actors, aware of the problem, aware that the problem exists, that people are actually facing difficulties in paying their bill, in getting their house at a comfortable level. And what we were targeting were the actors on the ground. So we saw with Anna-Mary the difficulties with the peer-to-peer mechanisms. We saw the difficulties with the municipalities. Our idea was to build a holistic training approach that could be addressed to all actors on the ground. And so the first problem that we were facing was that these actors were not aware of the project and were not aware of the best position that they are in. I mean, social actors are the actors on the ground dealing with the people in energy poverty, so they are really the ones supporting them, giving them advice, the heroes, as Anna-Marie called them. And they are the ones who are able to have an open dialogue with them without any barriers, trust barriers, so they can speak out and give the advice. And the first really barrier was the recognition, empowering them on their role, and then came the second part of empowering them with let's call them skills, competences, capacities, and I'm not speaking of very technical engineering skills because we know that's needed, but not in a first-hand position. So what we needed is them to be able to provide advice, to be able to answer the questions that all the people in energy poverty were asking themselves, and we built to a training course, and the training course was online. It was in the national language, and the fact that it was online and in national languages, I think these two were very positive because, well, social actors usually do not speak English, so the national language was a must. And the fact that it was online enabled them to take it at their own speed and just to go on with it. But I would say that the barriers were the lack of knowledge and the lack of awareness, and the solutions probably were the training. And other two things that came out before, with the training we had the sort of mentoring, so supporting these social actors on the ground within their work, and that too was very important because the training is not enough. What we see is that most often being social actors, they don't feel empowered to give advice on energy issues. So they still feel that but we are social, we're not on. So this second part of mentoring them was really useful, but it helped them get the confidence. And the third thing that came up is the networking. The networking of the trained actors, and I would add of all the actors working on energy poverty, and this room is an example, is definitely a key solution to tackle energy poverty in terms of skills and empowerment.
Thank you very much. I would like to keep on schedule, so we have 15 minutes, and I would like to share a common question with all of you. So, we are always learning by doing, and we often have a success story as much as unexpected challenges that can be considered, let's say, failure, even if it is not a super nice word. I would like you to share with us, if you have, very shortly, a special story that signed a milestone in your process on energy poverty. And let's start reverse from Marina, so you are the first on the spot.
Help. Well, success story, the training course, the online training, the mentoring, difficulties really getting all the actors on board, and what we are trying now to do is to get the municipalities also in this big network. And it's difficult, but I think that there is the need to not only empower municipalities, but also to create local, national networks of municipalities. So this is what we are trying to do in Italy. I'll tell you next year if it worked.
Okay. As a successful story, and maybe something that was shown that maybe not as successful but lesson learned, we would say that even if we had a powerful toolkit and we want to gather all data, create the measures, if you think that energy poor citizen doesn't know how to save energy or how much they are spending, you're wrong. They are really, they are better than us in saving energy, so they know, and sometimes they want immediately face-to-face approach, immediate advice. So sometimes maybe the lesson will be like, if you want to gather data, prepare that they are not immediately like to share because they know what their problem is, so they want a solution. But still, I would say, like in our PowerPool project, one of the reasons that we have really good in City of Križevci, we had this collaboration with Red Cross. So they have done data for us because they know those people because of they are beneficiaries of their other programs. So when they come to them, like they speak, they will share the data, they will give the data, and they know. They were like actually amazed that someone started talking with them about paying the bills or about energy, because they didn't think that it could be sold to them, like for them food or something like that is most approach that they're getting, but nobody's talk about energy. Let's say in Greece we have this local hero that's from Cyprus. He went like 100 households visit because everybody knows who he is, everybody knows who his grandfathers, who is his mother, father. He was kid of that person, like in generation you can go, and they were more open to this local hero to give data. In Hungary, energy box was shared through the visiting of the household. So this is small box, 30, 40 euros, and you can put LED bulbs. You can put something to like aluminium foil around the walls to prevent the heating losing and everything. So this is kind of approach that was used, and for me this is like the really good best practice that you can read in this guidance for the local government in PowerPool projects, so you can see what was the best. I give you here 3 examples and one general about how the mapping was going around.
It's a difficult one because, yeah, we usually focus on the negative stuff. So I'm thinking a lot of negative stuff, but yeah. I mean, one of them is similar to what was said already in Agia Marina Chrysochous. Because of Mrs. Mary and that she has the trust of the community, she was able to visit a lot of households, something that would never happen if it weren't for the connection with the local community. So this is one. And the second one, I think, at least for us, is for the funding for people with disabilities. It was a process of more than 3 years trying to convince the government to let an NGO participate in such a fund, such as resilience and recovery funds. It's like one, I think 2 or 3 NGOs in the whole of Europe who were able to access these funds. And I think we were able to divert these funds to people who really need it and who wouldn't otherwise be able to access it. And this is what we hear from our interaction with them. And yeah, I would love to see more doors open for our organizations to participate in such grants to offer the help where it's needed. Cheers.
You want to do with this? Okay, for us, as I say before, for us is the Service Healthy Homes Office. And this office just started a project as open the public office and data collection input, just that. But currently the office has involved as a link for citizens data, city council, project partners and tailor-made solutions. It's all the iterative process. They were the link between the entire project. The collaboration was the crucial work. Is the office where the locals can learn, and they identify that office that they can trust in everything, and they feel comfortable, where they can really find a real solution, because it's a dramatic situation that they are living over there. So I think that is the best point of that office, that the people feeling that way when they arrive. We are a lot of partners in the project, but in this office it was like suddenly they identified that name with that help, but real help immediately. So I think for us in EPAH at least, recommended to put that kind of office in all the local municipalities. Yes.
I swear it will be short, okay? Szanowni Państwo, jeżeli chodzi o kamień milowy, jeżeli chodzi o nasze działania w kwestii zwalczania ubóstwa, to myślę, powiem troszeczkę inaczej niż moje szanowne przedmówczynie, ale będzie to wojna w Ukrainie, ponieważ tak jak mówiłem Państwu kilkanaście minut temu, podejmowaliśmy działania edukacyjne i takie w formie takich twardych działań, twardego wsparcia dla naszych mieszkańców, ale myślę, że nasi mieszkańcy odczuli te działania wojenne, myślę, nieco mocniej niż Państwo tutaj w Warszawie czy w innych regionach Polski, kiedy to mieliśmy bezpośredni kontakt z uchodźcami i to było naprawdę kilkadziesiąt tysięcy ludzi w ciągu dnia w szczytowym okresie, w pierwszych dniach wojny. No i wszystkie reperkusje związane z wojną w Ukrainie, zwłaszcza te ekonomiczne, jeżeli chodzi o wzrost cen energii, a także innych paliw, tak więc myślę, że to był taki kamień milowy, jeżeli chodzi też o wzrost świadomości. My możemy w nieskończoność przekonywać, uczyć, ale jeżeli gdy mieszkaniec miasta, gdy przeciętny człowiek poczuje na własnej kieszeni skutki, to też jakby ta chęć do zmian jest większa i myślę, że właśnie wojna w Ukrainie w taki sposób podziałała. I myślę też, że właśnie uczestnictwo w tym programie EPAH też pomoże. Bardzo wiele sobie obiecuję po tym programie i myślę, że gdy spotkamy się, mam nadzieję, w niedalekiej przyszłości będę mógł się pochwalić dalszymi efektami. Dziękuję.
So, ladies and gentlemen, a milestone. Well, I will talk about something different than my colleagues have been talking about. I will talk about the war in Ukraine. I think that in the case of my city, Zamość, that was the real milestone. Because before the war, yes, we did offer education. Yes, we did offer tangible support. But it was only when the war came that people actually experienced what the consequences of the real problem were. We have like thousands of refugees coming to Zamość every day just after the war started. So people were able to feel these consequences much more than people here in the capital, in Warsaw, for example, or in other parts of Poland. And there were different consequences. The economic consequences, of course, the rising energy prices, the rising prices of other fuels. So that was the real milestone when it comes to the awareness as such. You can keep talking, you can keep educating, but you actually need people to feel the real consequences themselves. It's only then that they start understanding, and it's only then when it becomes effective. That's why I have high hopes for this program of the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, and I really hope that the results will be great and that I will be able to share them when we meet again.
Thank you very much to everyone. I think we had the opportunity to see really all the different perspectives from the geopolitical challenges to the more detailed and rural communities. The purpose of this conference is to share. And as I said at the starting of this session, it's 2 days of learning. So I really welcome you to take the chance all the time to engage with the people nearby you, with them and the others. And also because it was mentioned in the, we think sometimes of the difficulties and not of the success stories. Personally, I believe that the difficulties is also part of sharing. And I welcome you to share also what are your challenges, because the person in front of you can maybe share, and in this case it's an empathic relationship you start, or maybe they have the solution you were looking for. So don't feel ashamed to tell the difficulties you have. I assure you, we all have approaching the different realities, so engage with all the people and enjoy the exchange. Thank you very much.
So, thanks a lot to all the panelists, to all the welcoming speakers. I think we sort of kicked these 2 days off in a good manner. From now on, as Dora said, we will be taking advantage of the fact that we are no longer seeing only like this much of each other, but that we are seeing the whole being of each other, and that's where we need to start sort of the mingling. So ensure that your name tag is facing this direction, because I'm sure that there's a lot of people that knows each other by the face, but maybe has not checked the participants list in Teams on the names. So be open, use these as your sort of hanging business cards, and do a bit of mingling, for instance, at our lunch right now.